Oh, we're back again, aren't
We
we?
are. This is getting a regular habit. It's actually quite a nice habit to have, isn't it?
Yeah,
Talking
because
shop and for other people to
yeah,
listen
because we
to.
both enjoy it, I think, and yeah, I think learning more and even sharing more, I think it is, because I think even when we're talking about, oh, I hadn't thought about that, or that's an
My
interesting
brain's going
point.
10 to the dozen, yeah,
Oh, just
updating.
adjust.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we can talk about this. And I'm like, yeah, and having to kind of slow down and go, actually, we can cover that. It's not, this is not the entire, it'll never be the end, will it? And that's what I love about our work sometimes. There really isn't an end. There's a time where clients fly solo and we kind of leave them behind. I often get emails much later on, thank yous and stuff, which is nice to have. But yeah, there's never there's an ing on everything, and people say recovered, and I'm like ing. It's always an ing, never an id. Yeah, it's like lived experience. Right now, it's a living
Yeah,
experience. Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, it's
So
live.
today we're going to go, we thought what we talk about is the attachment theory.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is something we touched on at college when I was in training, but we had 3 volumes of John Bowlby's to study, and then
Oh, it's so boring when you just give the book, get the book.
so it was attachment, separation, and loss, and he split us into 3 and said, okay, each the group will read one volume, then
Mm.
come back together, put it together. But actually, you know what? Hardly even touched the subject, in all honesty.
You're absolutely right. I don't think a lot of people have a very good lens for attachments. I'm going to put my hands up and say I've got a super one for, mine's microscopic. Um, Maybe because of my own history, but also because I've been fascinated by it to make sense of my own kind of dysfunctions. And not actually, I'm going to reword that. They're not dysfunctions, they're my abilities to cope after trauma and how I make sense of relationships and how I connect. And I think they're so important to look at in our couples and families. Um,
And just for
there
ourselves,
are
even just for ourselves, of understanding ourselves.
understanding how we might yo-yo in and out, or I'm a yo-yo in and out with a disorganized attachment, and I've often said to you, disorganized on steroids at the moment because of stuff that's been going on. So yeah, just for those who don't know anything about attachment theory, I'm going to give a little bit,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to go into massive detail because you can go and look up if you want to kind of study. We're just going to give you a bit more of how it plots out and what we
I'm going to
notice
start.
in our clients.
I'm going to start with secure attachment, which not many of us have experienced. What
I
I
don't,
did.
I'm not sure for anyone. It's interesting because um, when I'm looking at this stuff and people give me statistics like how many people have disordered eating and how many people have this attachment style, and I'm like, I sometimes think it's everyone.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know of anybody. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know the world, so yes, but how many of us had caregivers who were there and were emotionally
No,
available?
I don't think anybody does. If it's really, yeah, you're right. We have a bias lens. We have to own our lenses of bias because we work with trauma, with relationships. But if I look at beyond my kind of therapy room and my clients and my friends, we all have insecurities, don't we?
Yeah.
And actually, but Balby's theory came out, I think in the was it the 70s? I'm pretty sure it's the 60s or 70s. I can't even remember now. But way back then, they realized that children weren't getting well without their parents in hospital. And so this
Mm,
Richard and John and Richard, his son, I can't remember which way around it is, Richard and
yeah,
John,
Richard's the son.
um, Balby came up with this attachment theory that actually we need our caregivers close by for security
You
and
know how I
safety.
explain it a bit? I say, well, it's like having a raft, and that raft is really solid, so that yes, you can go and paddle off it on it, but you come back and that raft is still there, and it's very solid and it's very secure.
And you're describing a secure base.
Yes, it
That
is.
is the
That's it.
heart of
So think
attachment
about
theory.
that base at that raft, because the raft you can paddle off it. I
Yeah,
mean, you can go and explore, but know that when you come back, the raft is
You
still
go back, you go to threat, you come back to safety, threat, safety, threat, safety. But unfortunately, for lots of people who've been through trauma, they didn't have that safe base enough. And so actually, sometimes there's no safety.
yeah,
And then we've got a really insecure attachment, no safety.
yeah.
Sometimes there is care, but not enough, or it's not consistent. And so what we end up with is a disorganized attachment. And we see this a lot with abuse. And the disorganized attachment is I need and I want, but I won't come and ask, and I can't tolerate because I didn't get my needs met. And so actually I'm wanting, but I won't ask. I can't actually, we struggle to own that we allow needs.
Mm,
And so actually the disorganized attachment is very much a yo-yoing in and out, and
yeah,
wanting, not tolerating. Yeah.
yeah.
And we see a lot of that.
I would say I kind of try and figure mine out in a way because there is, I think I was avoidant. So in other words, I couldn't rely on my caregivers to be there. I would get very mixed messages. They'd be there,
Yeah,
but they weren't on theirs.
inconsistent.
But then, so what that left me being, I had to be independent. And that means I can't really commit to a relationship, not fully.
Avoidant attachment
Yeah,
style,
avoidant.
maybe, but I
But
think
the
it's
other side, I think,
go
is
on.
um, I think I've also got some oh, I've got it out of my head now. I've got some help me out here.
There's insecure,
Anxious,
there's avoidant,
yeah,
there's
anxious
ambivalent, and
attachment.
there is disorganized.
Yeah, anxious attachment because I will feel that anxiety if a partner isn't there, but then if they are there, it's or well, I might feel claustrophobic. So I think I yo-yo between those.
It sounds very disorganized.
Probably.
It sounds a little in the disorganized, but I also think it's important as people are listening to this and they might be thinking, which attachment style am I? I think we move through the boxes. We can move through the boxes. So, for
Yeah.
instance, I recognize a disorganized and a not tolerating as we
Mm,
move into maybe a secure relationship. So, I recognize myself being in a long term, really secure and consistent relationship. I become more secure. And so I can trust relationships come a little bit easier as I settle down and feel safe. There's a
mm,
base for me. My partner acted as a base.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's no secret that I haven't that I've had some mental and having a lived experience of going through a divorce, and so that secure base being ripped away has been
Mm,
traumatic and caused a lot of health issues. And
mm,
this is, I think, where we get people who are experiencing mental health difficulties and were pathologized when actually we may have felt safe and now we don't, and we're spiraling and spinning. Yeah.
yeah.
And so I think we can move. I don't think attachment styles are fixed. Like, oh, if I'm avoidant, I'm always going to be avoidant, because we can learn to tolerate more. We can learn to feel more safe and secure.
Mm, mm.
So I think we trip through. We may nothing. I don't think anything fits neatly into any boxes ever, and
No, I
so
would,
they are
yeah.
a good basis to look through,
Mm.
lens to look through to understand what's going on. But I don't think they're. I think we have to hold them loosely, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think I feel the same way. And I think that avoidant, it is, if I feel safe in that relationship, then I'm more likely to drop that
Yeah,
feeling. I will feel more able to trust that person. It's when that sense of being let down that you go, right, no, it's
yeah,
not safe for me to really let myself be vulnerable. I
yeah,
think that the anxious bit was where I feel that is my parents were anxious at times. They wouldn't trust me to try new things. Oh, I wouldn't try that. Oh, I think you've got to be
yeah.
careful.
We
Now,
our anxieties get all your patterns, and this is frightening for parents, but it's also helpful. I'm aware that it's like, oh my god, often for parents, and there can be a lot of shame around
yeah,
having new information that updates you. So I just want
yeah,
to, for anybody who's a parent or watching this, or in a relationship, you're going to get some new information and you're going to kind of go running to, oh my gosh, yeah, I didn't know
Yeah,
any of this.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
what I
Because
want to do is almost kind of scoop in when I'm working with clients. I almost like I give you the new information, and I want to come and hold you and kind of emotionally and metaphorically, because you're gonna go, I didn't know any of this. As a parent goes, well, we have no friends. We have each other, but we have no friends, and we're wondering why this my child is at school is saying, and they're saying she's not in school, and they're saying, what, your friends are missing you. Do you miss them? And she's saying, no, I don't. I,
mm,
I don't see
mm,
the need for friends or a connection. And then I'm like, well, if we look at the parents, actually, neither do they.
yeah, yeah, we
Yeah.
definitely follow those patterns.
So those
And
patterns can follow through from our parents. And actually, what happens
absolutely,
is, do I value connection, and am I kind of wanting it, or am I actually like, I'm better off on my own because people are unreliable? And
yeah.
this kind of then butts up in relationships. I think
Mm,
you're talking about safety is a really nice place to bring in Brené's aspects of trust, because I think, what is trust? How do we build it?
mm,
And Brené's done this lovely, Courage Works kind of course. She's got this kind of worksheet, and it's the one I use probably the most out of anything, because it helps us have conversations that are really powerful, impactful, um, and different from the you never put your shoes away. So, what is trust? There's a braving handout that Brené put in her course, and braving is, I often share it on my LinkedIn post. So braving is boundaries. Yeah, it's so when we can be clear about our boundaries, yeah, then safety is built, because we know if for anxious, little Wendy, if she didn't know where the boundaries were, she could have settled down and known that this is
mm.
okay, this isn't okay, this is what's happening, this isn't what's happening.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Could I just bring in something? Would
yeah,
it be okay if I share something with you?
yeah, go for
A
it.
personal. At the age of 4, I had polio. And I was taken by taxi, didn't have any ideas at 4, how would you know? And I was taken by taxi to a hospital and put in a cot on my own in a room. No other contact with anybody else. No one. The only time I saw anybody was a nurse or a carer or a doctor.
And I just
Parents could
like
only
hard to
see
hear that, Wendy. Yeah.
no. And my parents could only see me visit well, I mean, they didn't have a car or anything. So the only times they could visit, it was like through a porthole in a window in a
How
door.
frightening.
So they were scared. They were upset. They couldn't come in. I've been abandoned. All
How
that
terrifying. What's happening to
terrified.
me, and where's my safe adult?
Yes, and I was paralyzed on my right side, affecting my speech. I'm not holding my body for several months. Luckily, I recovered, but that fear of you've been abandoned and you don't know why you've been abandoned, but your parents will
Such
look at you through a window, but then they disappear again. So the
yeah,
anxiety, they suffered anxiety, which they passed their anxiety on to me,
yeah.
but I was feeling that anxiety because I didn't know what the hell was happening either.
As we dig through people's histories, we hear so many stories of either through kind of abuse that's more obvious, like
Yeah,
fighting, shouting, hitting, violence, to the much more subtle things that have disrupted our attachments, like
yeah,
emotionally unavailable parents. If anybody wants to know what unemotional available parent does to a child, then I suggest that you go Google the Still Face Experiment by Edtronic, sorry.
you want
Um,
to repeat that again
the
slowly?
Still Face Experiment by Edtronic. So it shows you what happens when a mom just stills her face and disconnects from her caregiver. The baby is kind of like the mirror neurons that are talking to each other, the silent communication that says, she's playing with him. I don't know if it's a he or she baby, but she's playing with, let's say he, she's playing with him, she's peekabooing with him. The mirror neurons are going together, and they're wiring and firing together. Yeah. And there's an emotional attachment
Yeah,
here. And
Yeah.
then when she goes still faced and she just shuts down, the baby is kind of like trying to get her attention. And
Yeah.
it's so distressing. The baby loses posture and starts squealing, like, where are you? Yeah. And so this lack of connection, emotional connection, this emotional unavailability, it's painful. It's
Yeah.
painful for baby. Yeah. And when
Yeah.
mom smiles again and comes back, the baby starts to soothe, regulate, and come back into connection. And
Mm.
so that kind of the as Ed Tronick describes it, it's the secure base you're talking about, that good, the scary, and back to okay again. And some of us did never had back to okay again.
Yeah.
And so when we're working with people around attachments, when we get into fights and my partner's gone off in a half, actually what's happening here is often an attachment, um, there's kind of a rupture in the attachment, and it's
Yeah.
scary and it's panicky. And so we
Yeah.
might go, we talked a little bit about this, we go after someone before they're ready to. And we get
Yeah.
avoidant attachments too. So for years, we might kind of like bumble along a bit separate, actually, in work and other stuff. But
Yeah.
then, actually, if something happens to one person, they're kind of like, ah, oh, you're not here. Where are you? So you can get two avoidants together that kind of bumble along until you kind of need more emotional connection.
Mm.
So a lot of the conversations we're having with couples are often around, I feel lonely, disconnected, emotionally disconnected from you.
Mm.
What is emotional connection? It is knowing that you can hear me, you understand me, and actually that the boundaries around safety, that you're consistent, that
Yeah.
you're not going to hurt me, that my body can settle down around you, and that you're a safe person to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that consistency, so boundaries is the first one of braving.
Yeah.
We think when we put boundaries in, that people are not going to like us. Actually, for me and for you, and we know that when we know they're fences that keep us safe, but they also stop the panic of not knowing what can I do, what can't I, what's too much, what's too little. So those boundaries really help settle us down. When we first met, the first thing you said to me was, I'll let you know what I can do and I will let you know what I can't.
Yeah.
Clear boundary setting that says, I know where I'm going to stand here. You're not. And what happens sometimes, I think, in the world of when you're not okay, is people can step in and they'll kind of try and rescue you, and
Mm.
they don't know how fast they can swim. And so actually what happens is they kind of promise you the world, and then it's like, oh, this is a bit too scary now, and I'm off. And you're
Yeah.
kind of left
Yeah.
like, where are you, what's happened? And I think we do this in relationships. We're not honest
Absolutely.
about our limitations, and so
Yeah.
we
Well,
end up
we
over
forget the
promising,
other
under
person's got
delivering.
their stuff as well, haven't they?
Yeah.
So we've got two people who've come from, have got their own stories, and then trying to maneuver that and manage it. But I think it is. I think it's that understanding of ourselves, which not everybody does.
No, the more
And
self-awareness you have, the more likely you are then to be able to hold some of your own stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
being feeling safe enough, you can have those honest conversations.
yeah.
And I think, as you say, when people meet, I think I notice a lot when people first get into relationships, they want to be there for everybody. They want to do everything for the other person. They over compensate, if you like. I want to be there for you. I want to do everything for you. I love you so much. And then they get to the point where, hold on a minute. No, this is too much. And then the resentment builds in. They,
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, that kind of, I think it's probably it's kind of biology driven. Some of it is kind of hormones that, we get oxytocin, we're vasopressin. We got a lot of these kind of like, we're connected. There's an intimate sex relationship, so it's intoxicating. And so yeah, you're right. We can overlap too much, where there's not enough space and there's not enough air for this relationship to be healthy. And so, like, just like a fire needs oxygen to burn, relationships need space. Yeah. um
absolutely. And I
yeah.
think that's where a lot of the issues, because once those pheromones, they're up and going mad for between up till 6 months to 2 years, and
Yeah,
then they've done their job and that's it, and then they start kind of dwindling, and then you're into the real relationship. And yeah,
yeah.
that's when all those things that we're talking about can erupt, can't they? They can show up. They could be, well, hold on a minute, you're going out with your friends now and you weren't doing that, and now I don't feel safe.
And an
Or
insecure attachment might start to play out in terms of who is this, where you're going. Jealousy is an insecure attachment. Yeah, it's an insecure attachment, and what we do is we label people, manipulative, controlling, and actually they're attachment issues. Yeah,
yeah.
if we look through the lens of attachment, we can see more clearly what's going on. I'm
Mm,
thinking about when people when somebody isn't kind of like when we've got that kind of inner baby that from the still face experiment inside of us that's like, where are you? You're not here. You're not emotionally available to me. You're not present. We start to act out. And actually, if we're not healthy enough to be vulnerable, and be able to own our feelings, like we're feeling unappreciated, we're feeling insecure, we're feeling taken for granted, all of those things. And what happens is we start to poke. And I don't want to talk too much
mm,
about the poking and because we talked about some of that in the last session. What I want to talk about is when we in through the lens of attachments is when we start to kind of, often we do things that are really making us feel unsafe, and that's like when we find either a physical or emotional exits. Yeah. TA therapists call them escape hatches. Yeah. And so actually, the emotional exits may be a threatening to leave. Yeah.
oh gosh.
Which makes somebody feel really insecure because I feel like you're going to abandon me at any time. And I'm not really wanting to go, but if I tell you I'm going, I'm hoping I evoke some grief or something, a bigger response from you. I'm hoping you'll fight for me. Step right in, tell me how much you love me, how much you care about me. And of course, the
Mm,
opposite often happens, that this person panics. Their attachment's about to be disrupted. So they may either kind of panic and pull away because this is
yeah.
painful. They may not be able to cope with that and they may kick off. And so the, there's lots of ways we might emotionally start to either exit kind of physically exit. I'm
Mm,
going to my mum's. Yeah, we've had a row.
yeah.
I don't have a mum to go to, but somebody may go to their parents. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so actually this person, whilst that's helpful for you to give you space, what you don't realize is that the in terms of attachments, that person's left not knowing, are you coming back?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I often work with couples in that way. Okay, if you've decided that it's got too much, and you've got to figure out your exit plan, your strategy in advance when you're feeling calmer. And if you are saying, I'm going to my mum's, you've got to, or I'm going for a walk, you've got to really say, you've got to set a boundary in as much how long. And if I'm not still in a good place to be able to come back and talk rationally, if I haven't settled down, then I promise I will contact you and tell you that. And I
Yeah.
think it's much more valuable to have that plan in place before it gets really out of hand.
Yeah,
Because
I think
as you say,
yeah.
you
And
I'm
there's
I'm
something
leaving
about
and then
being
what?
able to just say, I'm going for a couple of days, but I'm gonna come back and talk to you. Yeah, I'm coming
Yeah,
back.
yeah,
The fear that you're not coming back, our bodies can go into a lot of panic around that. I
yeah.
also think there's also this yo-yo, when we talk about the disorganized attachment, I see this when I'm working with clients, particularly foster and adoptive kids, and those who've had real kind of a lot of trauma, is you can think that somebody's in and the communication's going well, and suddenly they panic. Yeah. And so actually I've seen this in friendships. We've had a couple of chats, this feels nice, and then actually what happens is they stop responding, they're gone. I'm
Yeah, I
like,
see
what
that a lot
happened?
with dating.
Yeah, I'm thinking dating world. We're kind of we what the idea of being in a relationship is kind of cool. But as we get further in and people ghost, I'm like, what's that about? It's attachments again. It's that vulnerability of can I do this or do I panic and backpedal?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And I think
yeah.
if only people notice that, because I mean, if okay, they just panicked, it's not about me, but then the person who's been ghosted, they feel it's all about them, and
Yeah.
that's they're only attracting those sorts of people. And yeah, we know there's some love rats out there. We know there are. Let's be honest about that. But there's also those where they go, oh well, no, it's not right, but I can't tell you. I don't know why, but there's something here that I just know. I've got to run and run for cover.
I'm just thinking about how attachment theories run through relationships, but I'm thinking about anybody who runs a business or employer, actually knowing someone's attachment style or starting to notice helps you know how to manage them or support
Mm,
them because actually somebody who has more secure attachment and has um, a fairly good self-esteem and feels capable, they're gonna wanna get on with it and they don't want to be micromanaged. Where
mm,
somebody else who has a lot of insecurity um is actually like, is this okay? They're gonna need more holding, they're gonna need more support. And so it doesn't just run through our relationships, it runs through our romantic relationships, but our friendships, our business relationships, our work relationships. And
yeah,
so, you know, that what you've lived through is then what's playing out in your relationships. I just want to talk a bit more. I want to drill through braving because I think
yeah, yeah.
they
You
are
touched
all
on it.
about safety and trust. So braving, Brené's acronym. I'm going to write it down because I'm dyslexic and I can then go through the letters because I can see them and visual. So boundaries, as we've talked a little about. The other ones of reliability, the B and the R and the A are reliability and accountability. Yeah, reliability, that you do what you say most of the time. It doesn't have to be, no one's expecting perfect. So if I don't turn up for something, people know something's not right because Mel shows up and she's generally on time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I forgot a couple once. I got my days mixed up. It doesn't
Mm,
happen very often, but it did. And they were like, something's wrong, really wrong. And so they were like, they messaged and actually my assistant was able to say, yeah, I've checked, she's fine. It was just an admin error and a mix up, and they were like, oh, the relief for them because it was out of character. So
yeah,
what we do starts to build patterns. So I know with my clients, I know some of the ones that will be bang on time, and so if something's not right, I'm like, I check in, and so we'll have a reliability record. And
yeah,
people don't think about this, am I reliable? Do I say what is how much am I reliable? Accountability, that I own when I don't get it right. I own what is my stuff. So and
yeah. And
holding people accountable. You said you do this not out of a perfectionist kind of frame, but out of a I can't believe you. Trust is a lot about believing, being believed, and believing.
yes,
And
yeah,
if your words don't match your actions, we've had this conversation in my house with I love to use my housemate. If you tell me that but you don't do it, then I stop believing.
yeah.
So when we're
It
having
makes you
couples
feel
are having
wobbly, doesn't it?
yeah, when we're having conversations with couples and they're telling me that this partner's not listening to them or they're not doing something, I say it's not a behavioral issue, it's a relationship issue. And actually, once we start to put the brave, I like to kind of bring braving in, or Brenna's kind of
Mm,
the aspects of trust. This is a reliability issue or an accountability issue. And we get into that, well, it's easier and quicker to do it myself. Like in the
oh,
short term, it is. But long term, you're storing up trouble.
yeah, definitely. And that's one I'm sure you've heard a lot, and I've certainly heard a lot.
I've heard
Those,
it with partners, but also with families and parents and
oh
kids.
gosh,
Yeah,
yes, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. It runs
yeah,
across it, doesn't it? And it is, I don't trust you to be able to do it to my standard. I can't rely on you to do it. I can't, um, I'm not sure whether you are going to let me down. I'm not going to sure you're not going to do it in the time frame that I need it done. There's a lot there that
I
I
want it
think,
done now is often because I can't trust her. Like, I want you to come and do it now so I can see that you're doing it. So what we have to hold our own anxiety. So when I was training my housemate to empty the bin, I was kind of like, I'm going out, I'll be back by 5. I'd really appreciate it. And it's a request, an invitation. Can you I'd really appreciate if you could empty the bin for me. Yeah. And letting her know when I'm coming back so she has time to do it and trusting and waiting and sitting back and waiting for her to do it. Yeah.
yeah,
And this is where we also, because habits take time to build, telling somebody once to do it is probably not going to be enough. For some people and some things it will be, but other times because it's our anxiety, not
mm,
theirs. It's important to us, but not them. Then we're like, they're not doing it. And then so the
mm,
story we then make up is that you don't care enough about me to do X, Y, and Z. And
exactly.
actually, this is where those conversations about why is this important, the emptying the it's not it I don't really like emptying the bin, so I want somebody to take the share of that. But
Yeah,
also why it's important is because I don't want to feel taken for granted here.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't want to feel taken for granted that it's me does all this stuff and that you just swim around in your nice little bubble. And so the story I make up is that she doesn't care.
yeah,
And actually, because I know I'm self-aware enough to know that I make this, I love this Brené's work. The first draft is never the most accurate one. It's
yeah,
kind of like the first draft is poor me. Yeah, what about me? Wah wah wah.
yeah,
Yeah, in hearing that, it's not that that's not important. It is. Your poor me is really important to listen to. But as we drill down, we can say what's really being triggered here. Emotions, as Brené tells me, are always driving the steering wheel. So actually, once we can get into the vulnerability of emotions, and talk about stuff, then it's important to me that you empty the bin because I feel taken for granted. I don't
yeah,
feel cared for. You emptying the bin, taking your shot helps me feel that cared for. And so, that's a much more powerful conversation than you never empty the bin, which actually
yeah.
just leads to blame and shame and shutdown. And the kind invitation in. So again, that good communication. I want to talk about. We talked about reliability and accountability. Brenner used the V for vault, and vault is confidentiality. Yeah, it didn't fit. C didn't fit in the braving, and so we can see why she managed the vault because braving's really easy to remember. So vault is confidentiality, that we're not sharing things that of other people's, that we're not entitled to share. So we don't think about it. Like if I tell you something and then quite personal, and then you tell someone else,
Oh,
that doesn't
yeah.
build that doesn't build trust. It says it's I
Mm.
always use the metaphor of a cut glass. If I've got a like really nice glass and I give it to you and you tell someone else, you toss it up the wall. You throw my glass up the wall. I'm not going to bring stuff to you if it's not safe and you're not going to hold it safe. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to feel that trust that someone is going to respect that we
Yeah.
have shared something. And I think the other thing is that when I've heard in the past someone retelling my story, they've embellished it. They've wanted to make it more interesting or just make it different. And I've sat there thinking, one, this is really not appropriate for you to tell my story. And two, you've actually twisted it around and it's giving a different perspective of me that
Yeah.
I'm not happy with.
That accuracy in telling other people's stories is something that really resonates for me. I had a psychiatrist report and I thought, was you even there? And she was literally writing my story for me, back to me, but got it so wrong. I was like, who is this person? Yeah. And so when we're telling other people's stories, to be really careful about, have we had permission to share this?
Oh gosh,
It
yeah.
happens so much in families, I think, and culturally different. I've talked about
Mm,
cross-culturally. Some families are some cultures are really secretive and you don't share outside your nuclear family.
mm,
Others are more family centered, so we'd share this with aunts and uncles. And actually, in the country, it's interesting the different layers as well. So if
mm,
you know, actually, I might share if it's shaming, we keep it to ourselves. But if it's kind of like my daughter's graduated, actually we might tell the whole community this to kind of show off a bit. But actually, it's still not I'm thinking of in a family like where someone started a teenager started her periods, and you go share that somewhere else. Yeah, that's not your story to share. Yeah, and
exactly,
couples also
exactly.
may get into hot water if they're kind of talking about stuff to their friends about that partner. And then they expect that partner then to like that person, respect them, but you've told them stuff about them. And it's not saying don't talk to anyone, because sometimes we do, but it's kind of, what can I share? What can I hold? Which brings me into some of the other bravings, I think. Integrity, doing what is hard. I think this is one of the hardest ones. Doing what is hard, not what is easy. It was really, I felt really, my husband said, "Can I have your pizza in the fridge?" And I said to him, "No." Yeah. It felt really hard to say, "No, no, you can't have that pizza I put in the fridge. I put that in there for my lunch tomorrow. I've got a busy day." Yeah.
Mm,
And actually, it sounds persecutory, but it's not. But it's about reliability and accountability, holding her accountable. You had plenty of time to get your own food. You're not stealing mine. Yeah,
mm.
yeah. And so actually, yeah, the integrity, doing what is hard, not what is easy. And I think there's so much of that in relationships. We
Oh,
do
anything
what
for an
is
easy life.
easy, pretending
Anything,
it's okay.
yeah, anything for an easy life. I couldn't tell them because they would get upset. I couldn't tell them because it would lead to conflict. I couldn't
It's
tell them because
hard.
it is hard. But the problem is that if we don't do that, and it is connected to boundaries, isn't it? Of course it is. But then we're leading to all the other stuff like the resentment, the pulling back.
Yeah.
And then
Editing the story. Yeah.
it, it 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 is hard to do, but I think it is just that really being honest with somebody.
Honest, but here's the bit that of the next bit of braving, which I think helps. How do we do it? And the
Yeah,
non-judgment, N and G is non-judgmental,
yeah.
and G is being generous with our assumptions. So I'm going back to my housemate and the bin. Yeah. Um, uh, actually, in order to have this conversation, this difficult conversation about me feeling uh taken for granted, um, uh, used, if you like, yeah, then I have to be able to find a way to do this non-judgmentally, yeah,
Mhm.
and I have to be generous with my assumptions. And my first reaction is empty the fucking bin, yeah, yeah, and you don't care
And
about me.
yeah, yeah,
Completely
that's it.
judgmental,
Yeah,
completely all in my wah 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 me. Yeah.
yeah,
But because I've got that, I can go, this is the first story you make up. What's the next story? Yeah. And then it's like she has no idea that this bin is pissing me off. Yeah. And she has no idea how I'm feeling about her not emptying the bin.
yeah,
So
yeah.
actually, I can, using non-judgmental and generosity. My generosity is she does not know, and she's not stuffing everything in the bin going, Mal's going to be really mad about this. Yeah. And this is the story I think that I see a lot in couples is he's doing so and so to make me. No, he's not.
Oh yeah. Why can't he smell the bin? He's walking past it. Why doesn't he notice it smells and it's annoying me? Why doesn't he?
He's
And
doing
the
it on
other thing,
purpose, or she's doing it on
yeah,
purpose.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
that
And
non-generosity, that kind of that judgmentalness, yeah, rather than actually they just don't know. And so actually I can say to her, look, I hate emptying the bin. Yeah, it feels like it's only me whoever empties it. There's stuff on the top, it's clearly full. And you just like it's not a magic bin, yeah. And so actually, I didn't say it's not a magic bin. I was generous with my assumptions that she doesn't know, and I can tell her. I'm non-judgmental. I can hold her accountable. it's I'm having to do what's hard, not what is easy. Integrity. I'm going up through braving here. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
asking you to be reliable and do what I ask you to do most of the time. And boundaries. I'm setting my boundary here that actually this is not okay and this is. Yeah. So we can use braving, I think, as a nice way to look at what's going on here and what's, how do we do it through this framework. And I think braving helps us look at what is this about. And maybe this is judgmental, maybe this is an accountability problem or a reliability problem. Yeah.
mm,
And so once we start to build that self-awareness and we help couples, and hopefully this is for the couples and people, whether you're in a relationship, been in a relationship, want to be in a relationship,
mm,
and you're all in relationships anyway. You're
yeah,
in relationships with other people, friends, colleagues, work partners, and you're in a relationship with yourself.
yeah,
We often think of a relationship as just romantic, but you're actually in a relationship with your house, your home. You like it, you won't like it. You're in
yeah,
a relationship,
absolutely.
I'm systemic, so there's relationships within relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that that really ties in so well with our attachment styles as well, because it really does, it that pulls into your braving as well. That it's all affected as how we're feeling. Why do we feel that way? What is it that we're that anxiety? Where did it come from? Why is it that we pull back? Then if you're not reliable, then that means I
You're
can't
not
risk myself.
safe.
I'm not safe. I can't be vulnerable with you. I
Yeah.
can't trust it. Can't all of that. And I think I just wanted to bring all that together because I think it is that sense of um, it does tie in really well together, doesn't it? That
Yeah, when you're consistent and we've got boundaries and accountability, reliability, it builds safety. I remember
yeah,
working with a client who had been force-based, forces, sorry. She'd grown up as a forces child. I call them army brats, sorry, but
yeah,
um and actually she had moved around a lot. So she'd learned that there was so much loss in her history that she either chose people who were emotionally unavailable or physically unavailable. Hello, Bella. Um, um, and so she it was affecting her relationships because she'd
yeah.
moved around so much. She was more of an avoidant attachment style. She couldn't settle down. What's the point making friends or relationships because
Ah,
I lose them all.
yeah.
Boarding school kids,
Oh, yeah.
abandoned, in really particularly the younger ones. There's nobody here for me. And so actually those traumas of attachment styles, insecure or avoidant or disorganized, they play out in how we settle down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm
So,
aware that we're doing a slightly shorter one today because of time. So I'm kind of wondering, should we wrap up here? I mean, there's so much more we could talk about, but
we'll do that next
this
time.
is a series, so we can't fit it all in one session.
Oh no, no, there's far too much to put in one session. You're right. So I think, yeah, maybe this is a time when we can say, okay, um, let's leave it there and we'll catch up next time and
Explore
yeah,
some
we'll
more.
explore some more. Okay.
Thank you for listening to anyone who is listening to this. Wendy, thank you so much for your time,
Thank you for yours too.
Brian, and I love the connection too. So yeah, time to say goodbye. And this is Bella.
Bye now.
Bye
Bye.
for now.